Hello everybody, Loremaster of Sotek here, and I hope you're all doing extremely well this week as we are on the build-up towards Halloween and the end of October, which of course is always an exciting time because that means we're creeping ever closer to winter, which is always a good thing in my opinion. The further I can leave summer behind, the happier I am. But we have some stuff to talk about today, which is the patch 5.3 dev blog that was released yesterday. As patch 5.3 is revealed and is now on its way down the chute, which is super exciting. So let's just bust into it, see what we're looking at, see what we're dealing with, and go from there. So, without further ado, hello everyone, Mitch here, design director of Warhammer 3, back with another dev blog. Having seen your reaction to 5.2 has been really wonderful. It was inspiring to see all your reactions to the new content, reworks, and fixes, and in particular, excitement for the future of the game. Speaking of the future, we're already well underway with patch 5.3, so I'll walk you through all the changes, as well as acknowledge some feedback. Alright, so, oh wow, okay, so we got like a good amount of feedback. Okay, what do we got here, Mitch? It says, we've asked a few times and in a few places for more of your feedback because it helps us shape what we do, and we think we owe to you where possible to highlight where this impacts us and what decisions we actually made because of your feedback. I called out in the dev chat video that a few things are on the list. These are high priority items that we've seen a lot of feedback on or feel quite strongly about ourselves. It's important to note that this list wasn't exhaustive, just illustrative, and some things we'd like to tackle. Something else we noted in the video was not everything you asked for is going to be possible, with another example being new characters. These tend to take a huge amount of time and effort, and much greater portion of the team's involvement to create compared to anything else we do. That's why you'll find new lords and characters in our DLCs, and also released for free alongside them, just as you will for our next release. So, hold on, I'll wait till we get to the end of this. Creating them as part of the DLC allows us the lead time we need to do all the work for the model and animate them, bring in the voice actors, etc. It's just not feasible for patches, and that's why we wanted to set your expectations with this for our interim updates. So, one thing I want to say in response to this, and granted, this is a conversation that hopefully I can get to have with the devs at some point, is I think it would be good to clarify on this point what precisely he means by new characters, because I think there is actually a bit of wiggle room in there. As for me personally, I would imagine that they cannot, in the vast majority of circumstances, do new lords of any kind, because of exactly what he said, in that a lot of the time you're going to need new animations, and you're going to need new voice actors is the biggest thing. When you bring in a new lord for the various factions, I hope it usually will lead to several factions getting new characters leading them, which means that they need to have new diplomacy lines, and for the diplomacy screen, they also have to have a lot of, just general dialogue, so it's a pretty significant investment, and that's nothing to say legendary lords. Like, I don't think legendary lords will ever come through in this process, and I think they're trying to make that really, really clear, because they take so much effort, where nobody wants a legendary lord that's just a really simple, like, copy-paste job with some asset swaps. Nobody wants that. Everyone wants the legendary lords to feel really good, to have a unique mechanic, to have a unique design, to bring lots of new goodies to the game. We want exciting legendary lords, not lazy ones. And that means that they're not going to be able to use this system. However, the thing that occurs to me is I feel like it theoretically could be quite possible for heroes to exist through this system. There are a couple of factions. I will admit, the one I'm really thinking of for me personally is greenskins, that I think would be really suitable for new heroes, in that the greenskins have so many overlapping characters that, I think for pretty much everybody, it'd be great to see them get all of the character options, where you have 6 different lords and 6 different heroes, being that you get actually, it might be more than that, now that I think about it. No, it would be more than that, because ideally, you'd want, for both the lord and hero slot, you'd want a black orc, a regular orc fighter, a savage orc fighter, and then a regular orc shaman, or a savage orc shaman, and then you'd want a goblin big boss, a night goblin big boss, a forest goblin big boss, theoretically, and then like a forest goblin shaman or regular goblin shaman, and then a night goblin shaman. So you're looking at somewhere between like 8 to 10, I think, different characters, which is so much and just not feasible through DLCs. I just don't think that's doable, because, you know, with DLCs we tend to be looking at a system where you get one new generic lord and one new generic hero, which is great and awesome. And, you know, they've already revealed that we're going to be getting the Savage Orc Great Shaman for the greenskins, which is super duper exciting. But I would love to see the greenskins get some expansions through that system, to maybe some overlapping character types. Like, although, like, for a good example, for me personally, is I would love to see a goblin shaman, like a generic goblin shaman hero who is either forest goblin themed or kind of like that neutralish goblin themed, where it can be mounted on a spider, like a giant spider, or it can be mounted on a wolf mount, and it gives you that, oh, I want to kind of design it to be more like a forest goblin character, or I want to design it to be more like a wolf goblin character. And I think that would be a really good example of a character that they could do, because the vast majority of the voice acting could probably just come from the Goblin Great Shaman and basically be the same. They'd only have to change, like, I think just a small handful of lines. But I also realized that that could still be the, well, we'd still want like a voice actor to come in and do those lines, and if a voice actor is going to come in and do lines, we'd rather them do all the lines, and yada yada yada. So it could be that that's just not at all feasible. But I think for me personally, there are a couple of hero types that sort of pop up in my brain of like, I feel like we could have these. Or, you know, like when you talk about like Dark Elves and Wood Elves, getting the missing lores of magic for those would kind of sort of be new characters. But I digress. Let's move on. Moving back to the topic of your feedback, one of the major points we consistently see is game balance. Ah, yes, the never-ending battle, because that's what it truly is. This topic is multifaceted and can really apply to most aspects of the game, but in particular, I want you to know we have heard your feedback loud and clear on both control, or public order, and corruption systems, and we agree with you. With such core systems aren't performing like we want them to, it can understandably have a big impact on the challenge the game provides. Another topic we do hear your feedback on. And so both these items are a higher priority for us to tackle going forward. I'll bet not in patch 5.3. Yeah, I'll admit that's a tricky one. I am definitely of the opinion that public order and corruption, I would rather them feel too impactful than not impactful. And for those that are not super caught up with what kind of the current dialogue is, if you pop around to the different places where this is being discussed, generally speaking, at least my interpretation, is that you basically have people talking about that these mechanics just kind of feel like they don't matter. Where public order has always been a kind of a tricky one for Total War. The biggest thing that's frustrating with it being that most of the time, the vast majority of the time, it is a completely useless mechanic, because it doesn't really enact any penalties that you have to super worry about. And if you end up getting, you know, a rebellion, the rebellions, the vast majority of the time, are going to be far too weak to actually do anything. You can very easily kill them. And the thing that makes it particularly egregious is that in an ideal situation, in the perfect game, public order would be something you not only manage, but it's something you should be able to wield as a weapon. So you should be able to take your heroes that have, you know, the effect to lower control in enemy provinces, and use items and traits and other ancillaries that also can cause negative control, and be sending those into the AI's territory to try and disrupt and cause problems. But that just doesn't happen, because if you play on even like hard, like not even the top 2 difficulties, but just like the medium difficulty, basically the AI can be functionally immune to public order penalties. And even if a rebellion is spawned, it never, ever, ever actually can hurt the AI. It'll always just die against the settlement. So what's the point, right? Like, there's just no point. So I definitely agree that needs to be heavily overhauled, of that you not only need to incentivize players to pay attention to it by rewarding them for properly utilizing it and punishing them for ignoring it, but also there needs to be ways for the AI to struggle with it as well, or to at least allow the player to wield it as a weapon with certain kinds of playstyles and characters and such, which currently doesn't exist. Corruption suffers from a similar but slightly different issue, where corruption, the intent for corruption always seemed like the goal was, if you were playing a faction that utilized corruption, your goal was supposed to be to spread it out in advance of where you would be conquering, so that by the time you got there, the corruption would be relatively high, which would give you bonuses and your opponents penalties. But they made a change not that long ago. It might have been in patch 5.0 or 4 point something, but there was a patch not that long ago where they basically made it where if you are a faction that well, it doesn't matter, but like whatever your faction's preferred version of corruption is, whether it's no corruption or vampiric or whatever, if you win a battle in a province, you basically spike the corruption there, which is a really bad mechanic, and I don't like it because it just removes the whole feeling of trying to spread your corruption to using your, like, sending your heroes in advance, or using mechanics like the various systems you have access to, or building buildings that spread corruption in nearby provinces. None of that matters, because all you have to do is just rush in there and, like, beat a settlement and win a battle, and you basically will almost be maxing out the corruption there very, very quickly. And once again, it's something that cannot be wielded that easily against the AI. Where if you're, like, say, playing vampire counts and you decide to spread and you're trying to spread lots of corruption, the AI gets bonuses that make it either not care about the fact that you're spreading corruption to them, or they're able to just mitigate it so heavily that no matter what you do, you can't really effectively spread it. And it just doesn't feel that interesting. One of the biggest criticisms I've always had for Total War Warhammer 3, especially compared to this, weirdly enough, this was something I preferred more in Warhammer 1, is that I really dislike... Total War Warhammer tends to be very focused on battles, which is understandable. It's a fantasy game. The battles are like the big epic spectacle type thing. And because of that, the campaigns have always kind of suffered a bit. And what you can do on the campaign map tends to be rather reserved. And there's no bigger case than that with the heroes, where the heroes, I tend to find, are far too heavily skewed towards, oh, well, you want these in your armies, right? So, like, we're only going to design them so they're only good at fighting in your armies, and they're just not interesting as agents. Like, if you have them as an agent, they basically have a single action they can perform, and you're on, like, a settlement or units, and basically you're just going to spam that infinitely every turn until the sun blows up, because that's all they can do. And everything else they do is passive, which means that you basically just have them sort of like standing around not doing anything. Like, it may not be a popular opinion, but I genuinely miss when heroes in Warhammer 1 had stances where you would send them into a province and there was a button you would click and it would cause them to go into a stance where they would basically be trying to do something every turn. So, like, an example was you could send, like, a dwarf runesmith into a province and activate his stance, and he would basically be, like, deadening the winds of magic. So he would cause the winds of magic to go down and to plummet, which would make it where enemy armies in that province would start to lose their winds of magic. Whereas if you had, like, an orc shaman, you could send your orc shaman ahead and have him do his stance, which would increase the winds of magic. Which, like, that's something I would love to have in Warhammer 3, the ability for characters to be heroes to commit to certain kinds of actions where they passively are doing interesting things, but you have to, like, actively put them into that stance. Whether it's using your wizard characters to generate winds of magic, or, like, having assassin type characters like be able to be deployed where they like increase detection for ambushing armies and hidden cults, or using cultist type characters who will make it easier to hide cults and hide other kinds of actions. Like, there are so many different I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for is. There are like so many different categories, I'll say, of characters where you could give them all different abilities, where it's like, okay, here's like your tends to be an offensive generating magic type caster. Then here are kind of your anti-casters. Here are your anti-cult, anti-corruption characters. Here are your pro-cult, pro-corruption characters. Here are more of your like, I'm gonna sneak around and cause disruption type characters. Here are your, I'm gonna maintain order and train troops type characters. Like, there's a lot of different things they could do there. And that all ties into this, where so many of the campaign systems tend to get overly smoothed out in the name of trying to make the battle component of Total War Warhammer the only thing that matters. And I tend to find, in my experience, that's just always a bad decision. Like, that pretty much never works out well. Anyway, I don't have too much information shared just yet on what our plans are with these features. I should make some probably standalone videos about that. The complexity of dealing with both these mechanics is larger than you think. They're both core systems, affect every single race, and it's often unique. It's not just for us to say control is too easy a system to manage. That will increase all negative sources, for example. That might improve one faction situation, make the system more challenging, but ruin another faction. Each race, and in some cases specific factions within the races, need to be considered in how they currently interact with these systems and then balanced accordingly. For one faction, that might mean too many positive sources from the tech tree. For others, it might mean their building tree provides too many bonuses, and so on. So without going into too much detail, I want to take a really deep look at both these systems. They're long-standing Total War features, and I think they suffer from the legacy of being carried from game to game without a real deep dive. Yeah, so Mitch obviously knows what he's doing. I have a lot of faith in Mitch. So I'm really excited to see what he's going to do to try and fix this, because he's right. The other thing that makes it insanely hard is that you really need to go into every single race, and in some case, every faction, and smooth it out that way. The biggest issue being that in the past, they've tried to just slap it onto everybody at once, and that's never going to work. Because, especially when you're trying to deal it based on fan feedback, because certain people only play like, how many people in Total War are like, I've owned this game for X amount of years, I've got 1,000 hours in, and I've only ever played Karl Franz campaigns, right? So that guy's opinion on all like corruption and control and everything is going to be very, very different than someone that tends to main vampire counts or one of the chaos factions or any of those other things. So Mitch is 100% right in that they really do need to go in and take it one at a time, which is going to take a very long time. But I look forward to when they have something to show us. Just one last thing on the topic of game balance before we dive into the patch 5.3 changes. I want to mention quickly the Ancillary rebalance I've talked about in our previous developer video. We intended for it to be a patch 5.3, but now it won't be. Okay. I know that may be disappointing to hear, but the interest of transparency, we wanted to let you know not only what we are releasing for you, but also the work we're doing that doesn't make the cut, so you can better understand our priorities and why we're working towards things that may not always be visible. This is a normal part of game development. It's very common in many pieces of work we start won't make the final cut for a number of reasons. One of our designers' will is written in more detail below what we've tried so far with the Ancillary system and where we will take it going forward. Ordinarily, you don't always see the work we do that doesn't make release, but particularly when it pertains to elements of your feedback that we're actively asking for, I think it's really important to let you know what work is going towards addressing your points. Okay, great. Awesome. I love the transparency. I love it, love it, love it, love it. All right, let's get into patch 5.3. Ogre mercenaries, huh? Okay, so we have some like pre 6.0 Ogre Kingdom stuff. I'll share with you now a look at our next patch. First thing you'll notice is that we've made changes in addition to 2 core Ogre Kingdoms features. As you'll likely be aware, we have Ogre Kingdoms content coming with our next DLC. So with that in mind, we want to take a chance now to improve certain aspects of the race ready for when more content arrives. As I mentioned, we'll briefly talk about what we're doing with the Ancillary system, and we've added in some new interesting items. On top of that, we've added improving battle maps in second tree cluster update. We got a fairly big balance update to battle coming, and new units for 5.2. So this time we got new vampire count units. Ooh, cool. Or 1 new vampire count unit. Excellent. Excellent. All right, so I will say I'm digging this already. I do like the much larger cast of options. Ogre mercenaries. The way the mercenary system works for ogres in Warhammer 3 as opposed to Warhammer 2 came with certain improvements. However, also missed the mark in a number of ways, and we saw a lot of feedback asking for certain aspects of how it worked in Warhammer 2 to return, but with the additional UI/UX improvements Warhammer 3 brought. As such, we made a number of changes in addition to how Ogre mercenary recruitment now works. They've increased the Ogre mercenary unit cap per army, okay, from 3 to 3 from 1. Very nice, so I can have more Ogre boys in my army. Ogre mercenary pools now replenish at a rate of 1 unit every 5 turns. The quality of mercenary units available now depends on the tier of the Ogre camp. Interesting. More mercenary units are now available from Ogre camps, including Ogre Bulls dual weapons, man-eaters with Ogre pistols, Mournfang Cavalry, and the Ogre Giant. Okay, so... So overall, I think this is a very good upgrade to the mechanic. However, I would like to see... So my only issue with this mechanic is I wish there was a little bit more interactivity between the faction hiring the mercenaries and the faction that is selling the mercenaries. And what I mean by that is I kind of wish that, like, if you're the Ogre player, that whenever the AI or another player hires mercenaries from you, that you would get like a percentage of their upkeep as additional income every turn. Just to kind of like represent them sort of like paying their tithes or whatever back to their tribe. But I would also like to see that it comes with like a small diplomacy buff for as long as you have those mercenaries, because you're kind of establishing this like positive feedback loop with the ogres. I think that's something I would really like to see, where it's like, oh, if you hire ogre mercenaries, you get like, I don't know, +5 diplomacy per mercenary unit that you have in your faction. So if you've got like 4 armies and all 4 of them have 3 ogre units in them, you know, getting +60 diplomacy towards that Ogre Kingdom faction, I think would feel really, really good. Like, it wouldn't be that dramatic unless you're just having a shitload of mercenaries. And also, if you're playing as the Ogre Kingdoms player, if the AI is hiring a lot of mercenaries from you, they get that +5 bonus to kind of smooth over relations with you, and you get like you or the AI, if you are the person hiring the ogres, getting a small addition to their income based on like the upkeep. So like they get, I don't know, 10% of the upkeep for these units. I think would go a really long way to make the mechanic feel a bit more interesting and stuff. That being said, I do really, really like this. One of the really big strengths with this system in particular that I don't think a lot of people think about, because like I saw someone I think on the subreddit that was saying that like they really disliked certain aspects of which is totally fair and fine. Like, it's totally fair to have criticisms. But like one of the criticisms they had that I really disagree with, because I don't think they were thinking about this, was they said something like this system is just so much worse than the military alliance system. Like, why would I bother with mercenaries when I could just have military allies instead? And it's like a better system. And the answer to that is that the mercenaries don't count against your allied unit cap. So for instance, if you're playing like let's say you have an army of dwarfs, you could get 3 ogre mercenary units, like 2 Mournfang Cavalry and a giant, and you still have access to 4 allied units from the military system, or military ally or defensive ally, or whatever you want to call it, system. So if you just want to go all ogres, you could have 7 units of ogres in your army, with 4 of them being from the full roster, whereas 3 of them are from the mercenary camps. Or, you know, you could do it where you have 3 ogre mercenaries that, once again, don't require a relationship with that ogre camp. So you're able to hire mercenaries like, you don't need any of those allegiance things, which allows for a lot better system. In fact, honestly, to be real, based on how ogres tend to be, I kind of wish they would have it where even if you were at war with the ogres, you could still hire mercenaries, because ogres tend not to really give a shit. That, you know, they tend to be such a neutral faction that they're like, yeah, whatever, like we'll go do a punch up against our old lads. But I could see that being a little much. But I really do think this is a really strong upgrade to the system. The only thing I would really like to see added is I would love to see the whole thing of like the faction that is selling the mercenaries get more benefits out of it for diplomacy and finances. That would be the only change I would make. Other than that, I think this is an excellent upgrade. Ogre Kingdom's bounties. Let's see. Oh, wow. The UI for this looks way nicer. It's not just like the Warhammer 3 red screen anymore. That is much nicer looking. Bounties. We'll be taking the theme of mercenary contracts and doing much more within the DLCs. Of such, we've renamed the... Oh, okay, so they're no longer called contracts. Okay, that makes sense. Because I think they mentioned that Goldfag's mechanic is literally called Goldfag contracts. So, let's see. As such, we've renamed the existing contract features to bounties, ready for when that happens. Along with that, we've made a number of changes and improvements. We've added a new more thematic UI. Looks great. We've changed the 10-turn generation into a rolling objective bounty system. The feature was previously only available every 10 turns, which wasn't very interactive. Instead, we've now made it so that bounties are more of an interest more consistently. Okay. All objectives are now available continually instead of only being able to select a single one. The gameplay for bounties is now more opportunistic in nature, and you don't have to accept a single mission, but instead can tackle any and all bounties at your leisure. Okay, so that's really, really good. I really like that you can do all three of them instead of only picking one. That's an excellent upgrade. My one issue with... Okay, and also, hopefully the rewards get buffed and not just left like this, because the current rewards are just not that great. Like, good lord. I've talked about this in my... I did a video talking, I think, about Ogre Kingdom's, like, free LC, or Ogre Kingdom's mechanics or something. I can't remember if it was in the DLC video or if we did it in, like, a free LC video. But the biggest thing for me are two things. The first is that the rewards need to be, like, really, really good. I am personally strongly of the opinion that it should come with, like, a guaranteed item, guaranteed money, and guaranteed diplomacy. And then, like, you can also have, like, camp growth as, like, a bonus. The financial rewards need to be, in my opinion, a bit higher, unless they fixed it, where my issue with the old one is that it would often give you missions of just the most bizarre, faraway places. Like, good absolute grief, it would want you to travel the 7 freaking seas and then some to go check out all these various places, which was super frustrating in my opinion, because they were often, like, so far away. It was just like, I there's no way I can make it over there. So hopefully they've made it where, like, maybe one of them, one of the slots is more dedicated to long distance contracts, and the rest of them are more for, like, nearby stuff. But the other thing is that I hope we get more kinds of contracts. Like, it would be really nice to have contracts that are like, hey, go raid this region to, like, put pressure on them and steal their resources for me, to, like, mess with them for a bit. Or, hey, send an agent to go, like, assassinate this character or perform an action against this city. Stuff like that. I hope it's not just go kill this guy and there's a little bit more variety. But I lied, because it's 3 things. The last thing, and this one's a big one for me, is that seeing how long some of these bounty expire times are, like 22 turns before this expires, like, good freaking grief. I would really appreciate if they would add in a system on the UI here where you could dismiss a bounty, where you could just look at it and be like, nope, screw that, I don't want to do it, and it gets rid of the bounty. And then hopefully what they do is, like, regardless of if you've accomplished the bounty by completing it or if you decide to get rid of it by dismissing it, there should be a very short cooldown for new bounties to pop up. Like this one, they don't really say what like the cooldown is for new bounties. I hope it's extremely short. Like the longest I would be willing to accept would be like worst case scenario for me would be like 5 turns, but I would only be cool with that if by using the tech tree you could reduce that. Like there were like a number of techs that would bring it down by 1 turn. Because that's something I really think they should do more often, is that when you have those abilities that are like, oh, you could do this thing, but then it has like a global cooldown of X amount of turns, that on the tech tree or through character actions or whatever, there should be ways to bring it down. So like, let's say at the start of an Ogre Kingdoms campaign, you have a bounties tree, or you have your bounty system, and you have 3 bounties, and you have the ability to dismiss them or accomplish them. And at turn 1, it takes 5 turns for a new bounty to crop back up. I think 5 turns is too long. I would probably say 3 turns would be fine. But like, let's say it's 5 turns. And then what I would do is on the tech tree, if they either, I don't know if they're going to have like a split tree, because they really, really like the splitting up the trees into the different tabs. So I assume they'll keep doing that. But I would have on one of the trees or somewhere in the tech tree, there be at least 2 or 3 techs that do other stuff, but in addition, reduce the cooldown timer for bounties by 1 turn. So instead of it being 5 turns, you get this, like, if you're like, oh wow, I really like the bounties, like I'm really being aggressive with accomplishing or dismissing them, and I really want them on a short cooldown, you can angle for that and kind of like focus that in your tech tree and get it down to 1 to 2 turns. Maybe Goldfag Maneater can have a unique skill that lowers it by an additional turn right at the start of the campaign, or, something along those lines. But that would be the big thing for me. I think ideally, in my opinion, it would just be, it's a 1 turn cooldown. Like you dismiss it and next turn you get all of your bounties refreshed. Or maybe you get like 1 new bounty refreshed at a time. Something like that. I could see there being like a slight restriction on it. But for me, it would either be, you either get all the new ones the next turn, or you get 1 new one to fill a slot per turn. So like if you dismissed all 3 of them, next turn you get 1 back, and then the turn after that you get another back, and the turn after that you get another back. But if I could choose, I would just have it where you get all of them back. So if you're someone that wants to be super nitpicky and just like you keep just getting rid of them until you have some you like, cool, you can do that. If you're more about like, oh, I'll get rid of like 1 that I just don't really like and kind of focus on the ones that I do have that I like, great, you can do that too. But I really, 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 really hope they have that as a system, because if it's the thing I hated about the old system was the idea that you would like get a set of bounties and all of them sucked. So you just kind of grabbed one and then you had to wait 10 freaking turns to get new ones, which for most campaigns, 10 turns is a long time. That's a really long time. Like even on a long campaign victory campaign where I'm going for like Steam achievements, it rarely will take me 100 turns, if that, to complete the campaign. So like I would be looking at most 10 different contracts, and usually with like the bounty system, they don't even let you have bounties until like turn 5 or whatever. So yeah, that's enough bitching and moaning on that. I love the way it looks. I just hope they've made some other improvements. All right, ancillary system and rebalance and new items. Originally, as part of this patch, we wanted to release our first cycle of rebalance ancillaries alongside a selection of brand new ancillaries to round out the item pools. We approached this idea from a systematic angle, defining new back-end tools to help us start the long process of cracking away at the balance of the hundreds of ancillaries found across the game, with our goal to set sustainable practices to allow us to simultaneously work through our backlogs as well in assist in balancing. That's great. Awesome. This was definitely something that needed to be addressed. The items have gotten very out of control, where you'll have items that are grossly overpowered or brutally underpowered, and like some of them are just weird and just not fun. Like any item that just does spell resistance, oh my god, throw it off a cliff, please. Like spell resistance is better than a lot of people think it is because it works against spells and abilities. So like if a character has an ability that deals damage to you, it technically also helps with that, which is good, but that's still not good enough to be like the only thing the item does. Let's see, we built this primarily around a power budgeting matrix where we spent an item's budget derived from how rare it is on effects to ensure that an item always had a value consonant with its rarity. Alongside this, we added modifiers that allow us to deliberately create outliers following specific design restrictions. This allows us to track down items that were far more or less than we expected and massage them into more appropriate brackets. Alongside adjusting the values of items, we have the goal of bringing some of the new tech the game has seen. Oh yeah, barrier is a defensive stat? Hell yeah. Yeah, more barrier items, please. Alright, the first part of this rebalance was planned to be released as patch 5.3, but when we presented it to our internal feedback channels, the feedback we got was loud and clear. No. We take that kind of feedback seriously, so we made a decision to delay it while we finagle with it a bit more. Here are some of the key issues we found in feedback. The difference between a high value common and a low value uncommon could be far too slim. So for instance, an item that was valued at 29 uniqueness, which was the highest common item, and a 30 uniqueness, which was the lowest value uncommon, was only a single point. We have decided to try and find larger error gaps in the values we assign to make sure the jumping quality is a notable increase. That's a really, really good one. That's a good one, because you want, like, when you get a blue item, you want it to feel like, holy shit, I got a blue item, yeah! Whereas right now, that is not the case. There are so many gray items that are absolutely amazing, and then there are blue items that you're like, oh, great, I got another obsidian talisman or whatever the hell it is. Like, great, cool, whatever. One of the things I need to talk to them about is that I also would very much like for them to... Two things. One is I really would like for them to bring back the ability to search ruins in exchange for finding ancillaries. So like, let me search a ruin, and if it's an actual ruin, I have a percent, like, you don't have to bring back the puzzles of the old ones. I like them, a lot of people didn't, but like, I just want there to be something. Like, even if it's not interactive, at least give me a percentage chance to find an item, right? Because then that could add a new blue skill for agents. Where like, oh, you're leveling up an agent. If you take this blue skill, he gets an extra 5% chance to find an ancillary at a ruin. And you can level up 3 times. And it's like 5%, 15%, 25%. And like maybe the base chance is 50-50. So if you have a fully leveled up character, and maybe they can even add a trait associated with it when you've done it enough times, that gives them like another 10%. So like in the best case scenario, excluding adding it as like a faction bonus for certain characters, you could have it where, oh look, when this hero searches, because he's been really designated to it, he has an 80% chance to find a random ancillary. That would be really, really nice. I would like that a lot. The other thing I really hope they add, that I should probably submit as feedback to them, is that I would really like to see it where I like being able to combine 2 items to create an item of higher rarity. That is cool. What I really hate is that it's random, fully random. In that, in my opinion, if I combine 2 common weapons, I should get an uncommon weapon. I should not get an uncommon whatever. Because in my experience, it is usually a very fucking frustrating system of that I will continuously combine items and I keep getting the same fucking thing over and over and over and over, and it drives me insane. Where it's like, oh, I've combined 2 grays, I got an obsidian lodestone. Oh, I combined another 2 grays, I got an obsidian lodestone. Oh, I combined another 2 grays, I got an obsidian lodestone. Like, the current restriction is already that you have to combine 2 items of the same rarity of the same type. So like, I can't combine a gray weapon and a gray talisman to get a green item. No, I have to combine 2 gray weapons, so I should get a green weapon. The current system I find so frustrating because of that extra level of randomness. So I really, really think they need to fix it. It's and it could go either way. Like, I would prefer if it was combine 2 of one type of item and get that same type, but it's a higher rarity. So like, if I combine two gray weapons, give me a freaking green weapon, because the idea is that I already have enough weapons where I don't need the gray weapons anymore. So give me a higher tier option. Or alternatively, they need to make it where you can combine 2 of any type as long as they're the same rarity. So as long as I combine 2 gray items, I get a green item. The current system is just stupid, and I hate it. And they need to. I don't care which way you go with it, but you got to go one of those directions. All right. Anyway, the value of specific effects is out of proportion to what they perceive as valuable. Okay. Yep. Some effects don't feel good standing alone, like spell resistance. Oh yeah. We're finding effects like these partners and other effects to make them more universally. That's good. That's really good. Like, I could see spell resistance and barrier being like a really nice feeling combination. There are certain items that were considered iconic, partially due to having very powerful effects that were brought too low by the balance adjustments. I would be willing to bet those were probably ward save items, because every time they've attempted to rebalance items, they always go to the ward save items and nerf them, and everyone's always like, no, don't do that. This doesn't mean we're leaving you empty-handed. Patch 5.3 will still contain 18, new generic ancillaries, which will drop only for relevant factions, to help you outfit your gun toters, bowslingers, and blowpipe blasters with improvements to their range performance. Hey, that's really, really cool. More ranged items. That's always really nice. That's something that we have very few of in the current game. Additionally, we've introduced the concept of randomly dropped unique items, which are extra rare and come with particularly zesty effects, such as a map that grants massively increased campaign movement at the cost of a small chance of getting lost. In total, there are 6 new unique items. Oh, that's so cool. Mad's Map. 20% chance to appear in a random nearby region. That is fucking hilarious. But 50% extra movement. That's really good. And then the Doomsinger and the Helm of Dreska. Okay, I'm really excited to see those. Battle Map Tree Cluster update continued. Like in 5.2, we're doing in 5.3 with an additional 46 battle maps. Very cool, very cool, very nice. And then we've got battle changes. 5.3, we've shifted the multiplayer meta slightly by introducing some small, not so small changes to just about every faction. Special thanks to Catholic Alcoholic, that's a great name. The rest of the team who put together the community-sourced balance thread, as it's a brilliant way for us to temperature check the meta of the battle side of the game. That's super duper good. Awesome. Some highlights include several changes to Nakai's innate attributes and army effects in campaign. Cool. A small rework to the Black Coach's abilities. Now it's based on how many nearby enemies have been killed. Oh, okay, that's a really nice buff. Then here we have additional effects with the spell Glean Magic. So, grants spell mastery for self, but silence for the enemy. Oh, Glean Magic actually does something now. Okay. That's genuinely very interesting. Wow. All right. Yeah, that spell is actually going to be good. Huh. That's nice. Let's see. Buffs to the Skull Cannon and Blood Shrine to make them more credible threats. That's really good. I've noticed that whenever I play with Blood Shrines, they tend to, like, I like what they're capable, what I want them to do. Like, I like the buff, but in my experience, they tend to just die far too easily and aren't as good as I would like them to be in combat. A rework to the Wildwood Rangers Guardians of the Wildwood ability. Very cool. Nerfs to Kislev, specifically some gentle multiplayer cost increases and reduction in the Warsled's collision power. Yeah, fine, whatever. Demonic Locust abilities have been increased to 55-meter range to work better on Ultra. That's really cool. I like that. Small rework on how the Arc of Sotek deals its damage. Okay, I'm curious what that'll look like. Let's see. More leadership for ghost-type units. That's good. They do tend to crumble too easily. More large units feature collision attacks now, such as the Tomb Scorpion, the Kadai Destroyer, Toad Dragon, more. That's always good. Very good. and even more buffs for the Chariot of the Gods. Hopefully it's enough. Poor Cetra. That chariot is difficult to get to where I would like it to be. All right, and then new unit, Graveguard with Halberds. How delightful. They look wonderful. Oh, that's very nice. Some actual anti-large elite infantry for vampire counts. Yeah, actually, I completely forgot the Graveguard with Halberds were a thing. As they appeared back in the... Ooh, gosh, I want to say they're in the 6th edition Vampire Counts book, which actually have a lot of units that I had forgotten about, because when you read that book, if you actually go to the very, very back, they have, like, specialized units for each of the different bloodlines, and there's actually quite a few unit variants I would really like to see brought to Total War. Like, there are some, like, elite Crypt Ghouls, which are, like, the Crypt... I can't remember. It's like Crypt Courtiers or something. I can't remember what they're called. There's like a fancy form of Crypt Ghouls that have like some armor and stuff, which is really cool. There's some actual ranged undead, which is a little interesting. Like I think I want to say there's skeleton with crossbows or skeleton with bows, depending on who you're looking at. But there's a lot of really, really cool things that I'd actually like to see brought to the game. Particularly if we, hopefully, fingers crossed, get the vampire count version of the Champions of Chaos DLC. But anyway, we know everyone enjoyed the new Orc and Goblin units with variants in 5.2 and added some new additions we'd like to see continue working on if possible. So we have added Graveguard with Halberds. Hell yeah! Man, I'm trying to think what other unit variants I'd really like to see. Because, like, a lot of them, it's like, if they're going to have something that isn't really in the game or we don't have the assets for it, it probably is better off as like a DLC thing than this kind of free LC format. But like, I'm trying to think off the top of my head if there's anything that really jumps out. If we're going to get Graveguard with Halberds, I feel like it's only fair to get Tombguard with great weapons, because in my mind, Graveguard and Tombguard are always supposed to be kind of like balanced. Like they should always be equivalent to one another. So if the Graveguard are going to get buffed with having a Halberd variant, I feel like the Tombguard should get a great weapon variant to kind of keep that relationship equal. But that's just my opinion. I mean, we could always use... Funny enough, Greenskins just need so many more unit variants. Like, I'm sure a lot of people want to see Black Orcs with shields. A lot of people, I think, would like to see like regular Black Orcs with maybe dual weapons. You know, there's so many variants you could get for Greenskins. It's just silly. Oh, you know what? A big one that jumps out to me is Dragon Ogres. That's one I would really like to see. Dragon Ogres in Total War only have great weapons, but in Tabletop, for as long as they've existed, you could have Dragon Ogres with dual weapons and Dragon Ogres with Halberds as well. So that would be really nice. Same thing for the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth. So I would love to see variants for the Dragon Ogres and the Dragon Ogre Shaggoths. That would probably be my next pick if I got to pick the next unit to do variants on. But anyway, that is everything for this patch. It's going to be coming in October. Very nice. So later this month, which there's not too much of this month left. So hopefully we won't be waiting too long on this. I'm really excited. I would love to hear y'all's thoughts down below about anything I talked about during the video, particularly when it comes to if you got to see, like, if you got to pick what the next unit variant was going to be, and what are your thoughts on, like, the Ogre stuff. I will say I'm not hugely disappointed by any means, but I'm a little disappointed that we did not get new locations of interest, or like special locations. I really, really like those from the last patch, and do hope we get more of those in the future, because I really, really think those are neat. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you all for listening. I'll talk to you again soon. Please take care. Watch out for yourselves. And if you're America, please go vote. Go vote. Go vote. Go vote. I don't care who you vote for. Just go vote. Make your voice heard. Anyway, sorry. I'll talk to you guys later. All right, bye.